Genesis chapter 14, we find a really great recipe, and we're going to butcher some of these names. We ask you to read along with us. If you're hooked on phonics and you're really, really good at it, well, bless your soul. We're going to try our best. Do good to speak all of English when we can. We're going to try our best to complete some of these names. All I can say is moms and dads must not have thought through these names very often, or they may have had a bunch of nicknames, because I can't imagine some of these kids being called this when they were in trouble. Anyway, here we go. Genesis chapter 14, look at verse 1. We find it here. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Ariar, king of Elasar, Kedor Laomor, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemibber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. All these were joined together in the vale of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Kedor Laomor, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Kedor Laomor, and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephims, and Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims and Ham, and the Emims, and Shavath Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tabor. What a name. And there went out of the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Siddim, with Kedor Laomor, the king of Edom, and with Tidal, king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Ariok, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. And we got through all that rough part to get to the heart of this message. Look at verse 10. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there. And they that remained fled to the mountain. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram that the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Ahor, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. The king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Kedor Laomor, and the kings that were with him, at the valley of Shavah, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. He was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. The king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich. Save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, and Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. Often we want those things that we can't have. According to GoBanking.com's last survey, men and women think cognitively differently on 11 major scales. I found that interesting because no matter the age, no matter the gender, no matter the economic standing, the most pressing thought that men and women overlap thinking about is money. Some of you may be thinking it's something different, but it's actually money. You wouldn't believe what came into work. Money and work. Now, differently, men and women think these separate things, considering these 11 categories. Number one, it's perception. A man and a woman can look at the same event and label it two completely different things. And it's usually always that case. Men and women never usually see the same event the same way. That's why when you're on the Channel 11 News at night or the Channel 2 News at night, depending on who they ask, which redneck, you get a completely different version of the story. Because it really matters who they are. Is it a man or is it a woman? And you may think a lot of it has to do with education, but it's really not. According to GoBanking.com, what they've studied is perception. We look at things differently, and there's no way you can change it because that's the way that we are wired. Guys, if you just went home with that understanding with your wives, and just took that home and said, you know what, we've got to agree to disagree. Because you're never going to agree on everything together. Amen? Some of you found it out the hard way. Some of you has taken 30, 40 years of marriage to finally figure it out that there's no way that we're going to ever be the same on the same issue. So perception is the first category. The second thing is singularly based thoughts. A man gets a one-track mind about one thing, and he usually wants that one thing. Despite what's going on around him, he wants to finish that one thing. A woman, however, because she's used to governing a home, is better at multitasking. Now, what GoBanking.com found, however, is that women are not as good as finishing the one task. They generally start a lot of projects and never complete them. Therefore, they have many ideas that never really culminate to anything. This is them, not me. The next category is social interaction. You've heard of the terminology social butterfly. Some of our little girls can out-talk a man. In fact, the average is 26,000 words more in a day than a man. Tanya?
No, that's
Some of our little girls, for real, can out-talk a little boy and his head will be spinning because he ain't understood the first phrase. It's just amazing the social interaction that men and women differ so greatly. And these, again, are God-given traits, not to be skewed into a different category, not to be tested and tried. These are the ways that God has made us different. The next thing that we think about differently is math. Simple math. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That much we know, but when you get into more of the complex math, not that there's exceptions to the rules, but it's almost impossible for someone to go to a great length in math skills because God puts men and women's brain on a different scale. That's why some men do better in engineering than women. But then again, put a man in a house where a man's not supposed to be most of the time, and he will destroy a home. Say what you will, it's just the case. The next category of major interest is how we deal with pain. Men tend to suppress it to their shame, to their hurt, because it usually blows up later. Women have the ability to talk out their pains with others of like minds. That's why you see 17 women going to the bathroom at the same time. Guys, we never understood it till now. They're discussing how to help one another. And they're better at that cognitive part of talking out their pains than we are. We are lacking desperately in this area, man. We're afraid of coming across too weak. We're afraid of tears. Men are afraid of what people might think more than women are. Even though when it comes to looking the part, women stress over that more than men. Men can throw on a pair of flip-flops, a pair of shorts, and go out and take the trash out. Women got to put their makeup on first. Not all, but most. The next major category that women just spank our pants off of us beyond is learning languages. Men, it's much more difficult for you to learn a different language than it is for women. Because women's brains are wired differently. This is according to their study. Now, I don't know how they would know that. The next one is memory. And I'll let you figure out who's better at that. Directions. Risk-taking. And the last one, of course, is sex. That's what everybody's thinking. I haven't said yet. But that proverbial thought that hits us every single day is money. Every one of us think about it, whether you're willing to admit it or not. And unfortunately, we have lived in a time, in a generation in America where we are spoiled rotten by having so much extra that we truly, in this generation, don't know what need is. We think we do because we don't get what we want. But the truth is, we've all had plenty in our lifetime. Now, you may have experienced some difficult times. You may be going through some difficult times. And your blessings have been taught to you from the pulpits and from the Sunday school classrooms that they always revolve around more stuff. But that's not always true. More things lead to more commitment. More things leads to more worry. If you give a man $100, he's going to try to figure out how he can make $200. And if you give him $200, he's going to work for that third and fourth hundred. And it's never going to be enough. And somehow, through the spiritual teaching that God has taught us that He is enough, we've transformed the teaching of the blessings of God's Word into the materials of our life. The same blessings that God would have us to know from His Word are as effective as in a village of Africa as they are in America in their abundance. So how can the same Holy Spirit in America, who's given to us so much, be just as much as a blessing to those countries who seem to have so little? We got the pattern here. Found in Genesis chapter 14, we have one of the greatest stories of all time. And most of you are thinking it's about Melchizedek, but actually it's not. We're not going to cover that part tonight. We're going to cover Abram. And Abram's reaction to the news that his nephew was taken captive. It is ironic to me that he didn't call for help. There's two things that if you want blessings from God, two things are mandatory. Number one, you must realize that God's blessings are only reserved for God's warriors. They're not reserved for the sissy sitting on the sidelines. They're reserved for God's warriors. It always has been that way, and it always will be that way. Turn in your Bible to Psalm chapter 1. Look at this with me. Psalm 1. Some of you know this one by heart. It's a great chapter. It's a small chapter, 6 verses to learn, but it's a great chapter to learn. And for every statement that God makes in the Scripture, you must understand there's also an alternate to that statement. And verse 1 says, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish." Turn to Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3. You may be thinking, how does all this tie in? Well, hopefully we can make it tie in for you. Because the Bible does teach us that there are some great truths about God's blessings. They're not always tied to your bank account. Well, I'll tell you why. David and Lisa don't care about the bank account right now. They need a real touch from a real Savior with real compassion. Dollar's not going to do it. If you've ever been through this circumstance as a couple, you understand that when those dark nights arise, you need to know that God's listening, that God understands, and that God knows what you're going through. And folks, I need you to understand something. He does. And He always will. But you think it's easy not to walk in the way of the scorners? Walk in the way of the sinners? In the time in which we live, it is very, very easy for us to go with the flow. It would be so easy just to quit against the resistance and just go the flow of all these other churches that they're going. Let's make everybody feel good when they come. Let's have no discipline whatsoever. Let's just come together and kumbaya. In fact, we have many people that should be here tonight, but because they're not disciplined, they're not here. Amen. They should be disciplined. Because God has done so much in their life to show that He cares for them, and they're not showing a good return for being disciplined toward God. Folks, if God comes back when you should be in service, you're going to be highly ashamed that you were not there. So it's not easy to be at church all the time, is it? You got to fight through some things. And you need to go back. Look at Philippians chapter 3. Look at verse 13. Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do. Forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. Verse 13. Folks, I find it very difficult to understand sometimes what Brother Paul is talking about. But then again, I don't. Look at verse 14. I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. There's nobody in this world going to be involved in a battle without some type of reward on the other end of it. In fact, even our soldiers go to battle with an expectation of being compensated from our government. Look at verse 15. Let us therefore, as many as be perfect, be thus minded, and if anything ye be otherwise minded, God shall reveal even this unto you. Nevertheless, whereto we have already attained, let us walk by the same rule, let us mind the same thing. Brethren, be followers together of me, and mark them which walk so as ye have us for an ensample. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. Now go back to Genesis chapter 14, and I want us to look at the setting that we found ourselves in. Abraham, or Abram at this particular time, and Lot coexisted at one time. And they began to be so prosperous and so blessed that there became a contention between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. And I can just imagine that the contention became really a problem that they had to deal with overall. Abram, being the better man, said, Lot, choose a direction. Whichever way you want to go, I'll go the other. But let's not be in contention. We be brethren. So that parting happened. And sometimes you have to part from certain people that you would consider brethren in the faith. And that parting took place. Lot took this portion and Abram went this way. God continued to bless Abram, and He continued to have His hand on him. And Lot began to pitch his tent toward these ungodly cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the other three that are mentioned here. Don't just think it was just those two that were destroyed. There were other cities in the plains that were destroyed as well. And Lot looked, and the story tells us he wound up living inside these cities. And he was subjected to all the filthiness of Sodom and Gomorrah. A war breaks out. Here comes Kedar-Laomer, and they come down with other kings to take over Sodom and Gomorrah. And they strip Sodom and Gomorrah of all their possessions and their servants and the people themselves, and they began to take them back. One Hebrew escapes. He knew exactly who to go to. Why? When you're in a time of need, one name generally pops up in your mind that you've met in life. There's one person you can call. Maybe two. If you're blessed, maybe two. But there's usually one person that has proven themselves through the thick times or through the thin times of life that no matter what you're going through, they're going to be there. All you have to do is call. This Hebrew says, I got to get to Abram. He finds himself getting through all the issues of battle to get back to Abram. He says, Abram, your nephew's been taken captive. He's a POW. Abram looks for no assistance outside of his home. He looks throughout all of his servants, and there are 318 ready for battle. Ready for a whooping. Now, folks, I don't know about you. In every church, we have a number of people, but that's not everybody in the church that's ready to take on the devil. And in every church, there's only a handful of people that are truly trying to serve God. There's only a handful of people that are truly trying to grow the kingdom of God. There's only a handful of people that are there to do the work. Everybody else just wants the rewards. But they don't want to be a warrior. Now go back, if you were to Genesis chapter 14, because it's very important who these people faced. In Genesis chapter 14, there were three groups of people. And look what it says here in verse number 5. In the 14th year came Kedar-Laomer, and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth at Karnaim, and the Zuzans in Ham, and the Emims in Shavah, Kiriathaim. Now what's interesting about these three groups, they were all forefathers to the Anakims, the giants. And if you were to try to compare these two, it'd be like looking at Noah and one of our smallest children in the church. In fact, I looked at an artist's rendition of the difference, and generally by stature, there was about a 3.5 to 4 foot difference on average in height. So when the Jewish people were fleeing out of Egypt, being led by Moses, and they said, we fear to go into the promised land because we hear that there are giants in the land. They had very good reason to go. Those 12 spies who went over there, yeah, they brought back, hey man, there's giants there. But 2 of them said, oh, we can whoop them. The other 10 said, no, they'd be too big for us. Folks, when God is fighting your battles with you, you're not in front of God, you're behind Him. He's out front, He's the captain of your host. You're giving way to Him saying, God, I can't handle what I'm going through, but by your grace, I can. If you'll just fight for me, I'll follow. And there's nothing greater than following your lead blocker. God never sends a water boy to give you sustenance. He always sends someone who's been in the battle. Someone who's been in the fray. Someone who understands what you're going through. And folks, when you're in pain, you don't need someone to pat you on the back and say, oh, it's going to be all right. You need someone to get in the trenches with you. You need someone to cry with you. You need someone to put their arms around you, not say a word and say, I understand what you're going through because I've been there too. Folks, not many folks are willing to be a warrior. But everybody wants the prize. Abram did not wait around for sport. He said, guys, get ready. Now, you got to imagine, 318 people was probably not a lot going up against these kings and their kingdoms. But not once do you find hesitation in Abram's plan. Not once does he say, well, we better check this out, wait a minute. No, he went to the battle. And once he got there, if you read it carefully, by night he made a battle plan. I find that interesting. Nowadays in America, feeble America, oh, we can't go door knocking because people may have dogs. We covered that the other day. But yeah, they have dogs. You may even get bit. Big deal. Go on. Oh, we can't go door knocking because it says no solicitation. Well, you're not soliciting. You're not selling anything. You're trying to give them the greatest gift of all. Oh, I can't do this because someone may get mad. I trespassed on their grass. Well, their grass ain't sacred, trust me. God's going to wipe it all out one day anyway. Don't get so reserved as a Christian, so worried that you offend someone that you're not a warrior in the fight. Because when I was in the battle of football, when I got to the sideline, I didn't care what the coach said until someone handed me a cup of water or Gatorade. I was dying. But once I got that, my focus went right back to the coach. Coach, what do you got? Folks, God always sends a refreshing to get you focused back on the coach, to get you focused back on Christ. Because whatever you're facing in life, no matter how big or how small, there's only blessings found to those that are truly in the fight. Don't you love it when mothers talk about mothers who have never been a mother? And people write books about children when they've never had kids.
How could you possibly know what it's like to raise a teenager unless you've done it? Does anyone in here have perfect kids? I don't. My kids aren't perfect. Now, despite what you think, moms and dads, yours aren't either. They're wicked as the day is long. Why? Because the Bible says there is none good, no, not one. And that does not mean that yours are the exclusionary to that rule. We are all wicked people. Amen. Therefore, they have the capability of doing far worse than what you think they can do. And trust me, they usually have already. We need someone that's going to be there when we're not there. I know parents today that rise and they want their whole families to hinge on everything that they are right now. Moms and dads, you're just not that important. You're really not. You're not so important that you replace God in the home. You're to get behind Christ and say, kids, this is the greatest thing that I can give you. It's the gift of God's Word. I'm not going to be here for long, but this will stand the test of time. If you'll just bury your face in here and start applying what you read, I promise you, no matter what you face, God will be there. You know why? Because He'll make you a warrior. There's a second pattern found here. Go back to Genesis chapter 14. Look at this with me. I love what Abram says in verse 22. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I believe Abram knew in advance what kind of people these were. I believe the rumors had already begun to trickle back to Abram's camp, that these were not good kings. These were not good people. These were wicked people, and he was ashamed that his nephew got tied up with them. You ever been in that situation? You got family that's done things, you're like, oh man. You got friends that are involved in things, hey, you wish you could change it, but you can't. Look what Abram said. Said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich. Did you catch it? Abram stood in the midst of a wicked king. It says, the only reason I came to your help was because my nephew was with you. If it was up to me, I'd let all of you die, because that's what you deserve. But Abram says, no. You had my blood there, so I come to rescue a righteous man that was afflicting his righteous mind in the sins of the world. And how many Christians do we know today that are caught in that same cycle? They know to do right, but they choose not to do right because the pressure and the stresses of life have gotten so heavy on them. So it's easier just to roll with the punches instead of taking a stance. Folks, you can call yourself a Secret Service Christian until you're blue in the face, but eventually you're going to have to make a stance. And it may not be at a time when you think it's convenient for you, but God is going to have a reckoning for your testimony. You will have to take a stance, and when the time comes, if you're a wishy-washy Christian, you may just seal someone's doom into eternal hell. I'm not asking you to be proud or arrogant about your faith, but I am asking you to be a witness for your faith. To look someone in the eye without holding it downcast like you're ashamed of your Christ. And say, I'm going to tell you what, you may not have an answer, but I know who does. You can try anything you want to, any method, take any survey, but I know a God that can right the dirty mind. I know a God that can correct a filthy home. I know a God that can put a church back together. I know a God that can do anything if you'll just trust Him. That's what I know. What do you know? Folks, when you're driving through this town, especially if you Canadian Porter, isn't it amazing the amount of alcohol that now saturates this county? Not too long ago, I was watching another Cops episode, and they were found here in Montgomery County. I couldn't believe the 3 or 4 accidents they covered that night. Every one of them involved alcohol. I don't know about you, but the statistics are alarmingly high on our streets today involving that one vice. Then you throw in drugs and other type of things that alter the mind, and it's just an amazing little pot there. If we would just do away with those 2 things, we would prove as a society that we love people. But don't you dare make a little jingle around Christmas that looks all catchy and sounds all glamorous to enjoy the good life. Because when you start drinking too much, things happen. Men that would never assault someone gets an assault charge. Someone that would never beat a woman unless they were intoxicated begins beating women. Someone that would never say some of the things in a conscious mind, once alcohol takes into the system or once a barbiturate takes into the system, it alters their whole personality. Or does it? I believe that it does something better. It just enhances who you already are. See, God tames that wicked, wild life of us by His grace. And He puts reins on our lips not to say certain things when we're truly found in the faith. That's why a Christian's verbiage ought to be the same outside of God's house that it is inside of God's house. That's why you ought to dress modestly everywhere you go. That's why you ought to be a witness everywhere you go. Why you shouldn't be ashamed of your faith. Because someone is looking for what you possess. The only way that you're ever going to truly know a blessing that God gives is by you giving it out more and more. How many of you have been blessed by somebody along the way? And you know, had they not taken time out of their busy schedule, had they not taken time to be put out, so to speak, you may not even be here tonight. How many of you were brought to church kicking and screaming as a kid? Mom and Dad made me go. Or that crazy neighbor kept inviting me and I just felt obligated to go. Someone didn't quit on you. That's why you're here. And we think that life that we go through is so different than what you go through. And the Bible teaches us in 1 Corinthians 10:13, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear. Don't you dare come to me and say, Brother Paul, I want a blessing of God unless you're willing to be a warrior. You have no right to ask for God's blessings. Don't you dare come to this church and say, I want God's rewards, I want His blessings, if you're not willing to be a witness. Why would God do such a thing like that for you? Why would He be untruthful in one regard just to bless you? Blessings are tied to obedience and faithfulness only. If someone looks for every excuse in the world not to be in God's house, you think God's going to truly bless them? The devil's won yet another battle, and another battle, and another battle. Now go back to Genesis 14:14. We'll finish this up with this. Why did He use 318? There's got to be something significant about that number. Folks, I'm not one of these biblical numerologists. Trust me, I'm not. There's so many numbers in the Bible that mean so many things, and whole messages are built around them. That's not what I'm trying to say. But God used 12 apostles. But yet one of them was a demon. God used only one angel to destroy 185 Midianites in one night. God chose Gideon's 300. And in our time, God may be wanting just to use you. You're the only person that reaches your cycle and circle of people. You. It may be through blood. It may be through acquaintances. It may be through your work. Or the one thing that all of us are involved in, commerce. Whether you go down to the local store to get a big gulp, or whether you're paying your bills online, you're always using funds in this life we live. Why not, when those moments come up, say, let me tell you a little story. And use your testimony as that story. And it could be such an interesting story. You say, oh, Brother Paul, no one wants to hear my testimony anymore. Are you sure? Because somebody's testimony made a difference in your life. And folks, trust me, there are so many people that want to sit on the bench and get all the praise, though they've never stepped on the field. Those that come when it's not convenient, I understand what it means to be a warrior. Those that are willing to be counted at school, at work, in your neighborhood, those are the ones that understand what being a witness is. Abram told them in verse number 14. Look what it says again. When Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his what? Trained servants. Why do you come to church on July 4th on a Wednesday night? To get more training. You don't know what's coming up tomorrow. Maybe God is prepping you tonight for a valley you're about to walk. Maybe God is prepping you tonight for someone else's valley that you're about to assist in. But there's not a doubt in my mind that Abram, through all of the things that Lot was doing in Sodom, Abram was steadily and faithfully attending to those 318 servants, saying, we got to do it God's way. I understand that Lot's over there and it looks more exciting where he's at, and they may be having a lot of fun at the initial start. You stick with this stuff, God will raise cream to the top. He took those 318 trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued him unto Dan. This wasn't a hop, skip, and a jump, folks. Now imagine along the way, some of them said, hey, what we're going to do when we get there? We fixed to whip some hind. I don't know how, but we're going to be involved in the fight. You might as well get ready to die, because this one may cost you. And one by one it trickled back, hey man, this one could be the real deal. You know, you get a lot of those that are preliminary precursors to a fight. And then when you actually get into a battle of spiritual warfare, you truly know that you're in the battle. One by one, their faith was being built as they were traveling to Dan. One by one, they were re-encouraging one another. One by one, they were saying, hey, we can do this. Hey, we can do this. I remember some of those pep rallies we used to have at Greenwood Village. So silly. You know, we got a game tomorrow night, and we get all emotionally high the day before the game. Think about that. And we'd walk out and we're going to rip your heads off. And then by the next day, you're tired from the emotion. I don't want to talk about it. God never does it. God says, I'm going to be right there with you in the moment of the battle. Not only that, I'm going to be in the battle with you. Not only that, I'm going to lead the charge. Will you follow? I know it's convenient. Trust me, I know it's convenient to quit. But God's looking for servants that are trained. God's looking for warriors and witnesses tonight. If you want His blessings, there's no other way. Father, we love you. Thank you for this work. I pray that you take it with us, Father, to our homes and to our families and all the details of life that we're going to face for the remainder of this week if you give us that. Lord, we have no idea what's on tomorrow's radar. But we know you're already there. No matter what it is, Father, we stand with you. Father, forgive us for the times that anybody in this room tonight has tried to stand on their own, in their own merit, as if they matter. Father, you're the most important thing in life. The folks that are dying all around us that are going to the devil's hell need to hear the message. They need to see some people truly standing with Christ, advertising the gospel message for Christ. Father, help those that attended tonight's service to be blessed in a way that only you could reach. Just like Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I've lifted my hand unto God. He's my reward. And Father, in this life, when we don't understand why things happen sometimes the way they do, help us not to tie in the falsity of blessings and finance. Blessings come from you. They are you. A greater awareness of you. Father, tonight, no matter what we've heard, help us not to leave this place forgetting what Abram did. He rallied those trained troops to face what was ever coming. He made the trip. The great expenditure of himself. He exhausted himself and readied himself for the battle, knowing that you'd be there. Father, help us to walk out of this place empowered, knowing that you'll be there.